Hey guys, what's up? It's me, the builder. So today we're going to talk about while loops and for loops in Python. Uh, these loops are actually really fundamental to knowing how to program well. So you really need to know how to use them. So let's actually get started. So while loops, what's a while loop? Well, it's in the name. It's basically saying I'm going to do something while something else is true. So the simplest way to show you what a while loop does is by typing while, then I'm just going to say true. So it's always going to be true. And I am going to say, hey, let's print out hello loop. Okay, perfect. So let's run this. And now we're getting an endless loop. This loop will never finish. So I'm just going to Control C to close this. And let's look at this loop again and see why this is looping like this. Okay, so the main problem here is that the true will always be true. So while this loop is true, it's going to print hello loop. And this code block is going to constantly be executed over and over and over and over again endlessly. Now, maybe this is something that you want, but most people don't really want an endless loop. So, how can we fix this? I'm going to fix it by making a new variable x, and I'm going to set it to 5. And inside of our condition here, instead of saying while true, I'm going to say while x is greater than 0. So right now, what's going to happen is this loop is going to run while x is greater than 0. But you may be asking me, wait, hold up. If x will never be smaller than 0, or it's never going to be smaller than 1. So when will this loop finish? Well, I'll get to that. This is how we're going to fix this loop. We are going to say that every time this loop runs, we are going to decrease our x by 1. So x is equal to x minus 1. If we save this and run it, we will see that this loop was printed 5 times. Now, you may be asking me, why did this happen? Well, this happened because our x is equal to 5 minus 1 the first time we run the loop. Then it's equal to 4. Then it's equal to 3 minus 1. And it just decreases every time by 1 until it is no longer greater than 0. So as soon as it reaches 0, our loop is no longer valid, so it no longer executes. I can even print out our variable x inside of our print function here to show you how this works. So if we run this, we see that it's 5, then it's 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, don't forget that this decrement of x happens after the print. So what you see as 1 is what is seen here as 0. Because if we decrement it, then print it, we'll see exactly what the problem is. As you can see at the end, our x is equal to 0. So x is not greater than 0 is not greater than 0, so it just stops. Okay. So what else? Oh, I know. How about what if I want to exit the loop as soon as it starts? What if I just want to do one loop of this and then stop it for some reason? Well, we can use the break, and the break works like this. You are just going to type break, and if I run this, oh, look at that. Our loop only executed once. Now, why is that? Well, it's because our loop begins, it checks this condition, then it decrements x by 1, everything's fine, then it prints out x, but then it sees this break and says, whoa, hold up. I have to stop, because this break means stop this loop and just jump out of it right now, just like abandon ship. And if we print out the loop exited, and we run this, we can see that as soon as we print the x and then we break, this print function gets executed. So, for example, well, actually, how would this be beneficial? Well, let's say we are looping through a variable, and let's say that for some reason our user decides that if x is equal to 2, then we want to break out of this because this, I don't know, something. So we'll say if x is equal to 2, we are going to break out of this loop. And we hit enter, and as soon as we hit 2, the loop exited because this break was encountered. Okay, perfect. Next up is the continue. So what the continue does is it basically, as soon as the continue is encountered, it's not going to break out of the loop, but it's going to make the loop jump back up to the condition. So it's gonna finish the current iteration of the loop and go back to the beginning. And this is useful if you know that you no longer have to do any more computations further on in your loop. So you can just finish your loop instead of having to go through everything else. So, for example, let's say we have print x, but okay, let's say we want to continue if x is equal to 2. So if x is equal to 2, we are going to continue this loop. Else, we are going to print x. Now, if I run this, as you can see, the 4 is printed, the 3 is printed, the 2 is missing, but the 1 is there and the 0 is there. So what happened here is that if our x is ever equal to 2, it's going to continue. So I'm going to say it again. The continue just concludes the current iteration of the loop. It just goes back to the beginning of the loop and says, okay, check this again at this point. Now you have to be careful with the continue, because if I have my decrement put all the way at the bottom here, if x is ever equal to 2, it can never reach this decrement. So it's just going to loop. Let me show you. As you can see, it's looping. To make it more clear, I'm going to print out endless loop. So as you can see, it's just looping over and over again because it can never reach this calculation here. It can't decrement the x by 1. So this is kind of like a trap. But yeah, like continue is a useful thing you can use in your loops, because they really help you make your loops more flexible if you have something that you don't need to do, if you're like absolutely sure about that. Okay, let's close this. Okay, so next up, for loops. What are for loops? Well, a for loop is kind of like a while loop, but it only runs for a specific amount of time. So let me show you. To have a really simple for loop, you just say for, and then I'm going to have a variable. I'm going to say x in range 10. And then I'm going to say print x. And I'm going to run this. Now, here's a couple of things that are really nice about this for loop. I didn't have to declare the x at the beginning. I didn't have to say x is equal to 0. It just knows that, hey, look, there's an x here. Second of all, what it does is it takes elements from some source, and then it feeds them into this x, and every time it loops, it takes the next thing from this range and puts it into the x. So right now I have a range 10. So what happens is it goes from 0 to 9, and it just takes the next one from this range as specified. You can also set it to begin at 1 if you want to. So I can go from 1 to 9. And if I run that, I begin at 1 and I end at 9. You can also have a step. So The third argument to the range is the step, and the step indicates how much it increases every iteration. So instead of increasing by 1, it's going to increase by 2. So it gives me a 1, then a 3, then a 5, then a 7, and a 9. So that's what a for loop is. If you're this is a little more advanced, but if you are feeling adventurous, you can also try doing nested loops. So, for example, if I have a for x in range 3, I can also have a for y in range 3. And here I can print out the value of x, then I can print out the value of y. And if I do that, I'm getting a 0 and a 0. So what this means is that I went in here and this began at 0. So the x begins at 0 and the y begins at 0. Then the next iteration of the loop, because this didn't finish yet, we're still running this. The next iteration of the loop, we increase y by 1. So then y is 1. And again, we're still in the y. We're still in this loop here. So this has to finish. So this is going to increase 3 times. And once it increases 3 times, we are going to increase our outer loop once. So here we are going to 1. And we are resetting this loop back to 0. And this loop has to run again. So basically, what's happening here is that whenever this loop executes, this loop has to execute. So we're basically running this loop 3 times because we're running the outer loop 3 times. I hope you understood that, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.